Hello and welcome to Inside the Third Space. In each episode, we delve into the concept of being in the third space through the unique perspectives of different individuals, uncovering their insights, experience, and identity. My name is John Tsai, an education developer at the Faculty of Medicine and Health at UNSW Sydney. To me, being a third space profession means having the ability to navigate and integrate multiple systems, academics, administrative, and digital, to collaboratively and meaningfully support educational transformation. Today, I'm joined by Sarah Hamdan, an Education Service Librarian in the University Libraries at UNSW Sydney. Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, tell us more about your role and how long have you been at UNSW community?
So, I've been in my role at UNSW for about 19 months now. I work in education services within the library, as you said, and if you haven't heard of my job title before, you're not actually alone. It was a newly created position. The library recognised a gap between the skills that students were arriving at university with, especially those coming from high school, and what was expected of them in higher education. To bridge that gap, they brought in people with experience in secondary teaching, like myself. My role focuses on embedding teaching and learning strategies into workshops and presentations, making them more skills-based and student-centred. I also work closely with the team to help us better understand our student demographic, especially students from diverse and underrepresented backgrounds.
Thank you. Would you say that's in your role? Are you mostly working with students directly or with the professional academics?
At the moment, I would say that I'm working more with professional
Mm,
academics. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And you mentioned that you're coming from a second education background. Could you describe your journey? How did you end up with third space professions?
So I've actually always worked in the third space in some capacity. I just didn't have the language for it. So whether it was, in schools or now here at UNSW, I've always sort of found myself working across roles and sitting in those, I suppose, blurry spaces
Mm.
between teaching and support and equity work. In my current role, for example, the third space is honestly, it's everywhere. I'm not an academic, but I support learning and teaching. I'm not in student services, but I care deeply about student outcomes. I collaborate with both professional and academic staff, translating between the two and always keeping students at the center of everything that we create, and making sure that everything that we do create is grounded in best practice and pedagogy. So I guess the third space helps define the work that we do in roles that cross between teaching and support. And I suppose most importantly, it also recognizes that students are complex. They have, or they do come with identities and histories and ways of knowing that don't always fit so neatly into that traditional academic model.
Mm.
And the third space work creates room for that complexity and allows us to respond to it in a meaningful and inclusive way.
Thank you so much for all the insights. So we talk about third space for a while. To me, it's actually a new term that I heard recently in USW. So could you share about when did you first heard about this terminology, third space, and what does this mean to you now?
Well, just like you, and I think actually for a lot of us, I actually first came across the term third space after I joined
Mm,
UNSW, and it kind of just clicked. It helped me name the kind of work that I've been doing all along. So, work that's flexible, that's collaborative, and I guess in a lot of ways, it is very hard to define. To me, the third space is about connection. It's about working relationally, so across roles, across departments, and most importantly, with students. That's especially true for students from diverse cultural backgrounds, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, neurodiverse students, those that come to university, like the first in families. All of their experiences of university, they are shaped in part, quite a large part, by how inclusive and supportive and how human our systems are.
mm,
And I guess in a lot of ways, we're not here to fix students. We're here to challenge the system to be more responsive to them. And so when we do co-create learning with our students, we make space for their knowledge and experience to shape the way we want to teach, support, and engage with them.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the sharing of your journey to the third space. And indeed, I am 100% with you on how we make students more inclusive and their learning experience better in the university, especially when they're coming from a very diverse background.
It's very
And
important.
yeah, and our system may be not ready for that without this support
Mhm.
that we offer. What challenges do you face as a third space professional? And what some kind of pain points you have hit to navigating the third space?
I think one challenge is recognition. Because the third space roles often they sort of sit outside of the traditional definitions, it can be hard for others to fully understand what we do, or more importantly, why it matters. There's also a balancing act. We're constantly moving between teams, we're translating across roles, we're holding multiple perspectives. Don't get me wrong, it's very, very rewarding, but in a lot of ways, this can actually also stretch your capacity, especially when you're working with students who need real time, empathetic support, often in ways that the system isn't set up to provide. But I think those challenges are also part of what makes the work meaningful. We're able to advocate for students in ways that are practical and human, and we get to keep asking the important questions. Who's being left out? Whose needs aren't being met? What can we do better?
Hmm. Yeah, I think for students, once you're in this space, you offer service to the students, and then you will see so much issues that students currently facing, but the system is not ready for that.
Correct.
Then
Yep.
sometimes we do manual support to offer that, but in another way, we want to scale it. And that's another kind of work we need to do behind to how to upgrade the system, how we can support academics to better offering service to the students. And I think you have also mentioned that you've been the challenge you've been doing. Do you think what's the important for the third space professional at the current landscape or the current situation? Do you have any other insight or tips to anyone maybe new to the third space?
I think right now it's important for third space professionals to simply just be vocal about the value of the work. As universities adapt to increasingly diverse student populations, we bring a skill set that's essential. It's interdisciplinary, it's relational, it's student focused. We also need to keep holding space for equity conversations. For example, how do our current practices support or unintentionally exclude certain student groups? What assumptions are baked into our content, into our systems that don't serve our students? I think this is where the third space becomes not just a structural description, but a value set. It's about refusing to treat students as a one-size-fits-all and to continually adapt the work that we do to reflect who our students really are and what our students really need.
Thank you. From your perspective, what do you think the Australian students here in our university bring any unique perspective or their unique landscape that we should cater off?
I think that's a really good question. I also think that's a very loaded and big question because, like we're saying, at the end of the day, we are an institution where we've got thousands of students, and one of the many complexities or challenges we sort of keep coming up against is how do we connect, especially when you've got students who are working in a post-COVID world, things that are online and hybrid. And I suppose one of the biggest differences when you compare high schools and universities is that it's so much easier in a school setting to make those personal connections. And when you come here to universities, a big challenge that academics are constantly facing, that students also say, is that there is that lack of connection. And so I suppose it's about facilitating opportunities for students to connect. And also just remembering that, as we said earlier, every single one of our students comes with so much already. They have their own identity, they have their own history, they have their own preferences and learning styles and diversities. And it's really important to not only encourage or acknowledge that, but work to include those things into our curriculums and our ways of doing, because all of that impacts the educational journey.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah, and for joining us and for sharing your valuable insights. To the listeners, thank you for tuning into Inside the Third Space. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the third space. This episode of Inside the Third Space was presented by me, John Tsai. Our editor is An Yuan, and our producer are Diana Turnip and Ellie McDougall. We were joined today by our guest, Sarah Hamdan.